Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 136 of the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg, and today Jo and I are going to talk about being fearless versus being brave. But before I hand over to Jo and we get into it, that could sound bad. I just invite you to pause for a moment and contemplate for yourself, what's your definition of fearless and what's your definition of brave? Because sometimes words can be used interchangeably and we don't contemplate it. And before I even ask, because I haven't asked Jo the ins and outs of this, if you haven't listened to my show before, we're very much, let's just go. I have to contemplate this, so I've asked you guys too. So me, fearless, I just get this image of like Hercules or someone. So it's just fearless. Is no, there is no question, there is no doubt. They just get the job done. There's never any second guessing. And I'm trying to think of in my life if there's anywhere where I count myself as fearless. Fierce, yes. But fearless, I don't think so, because even it's just this morning, I was driving the kids to school and there were traffic was or whatever. I was not fearless in that situation. I was like, can they even see me? Versus being brave to me is kind of like as trite as it sounds, feel the fear and do it anyway. Or and I think we don't often see people's fears. So they look fearless. You never know. Hercules might have been shitting himself. It's like, I don't want to fight Cerberus or whoever it is. And people often will say to me that I look fearless. And it's like, you can't see the anxiety that's spinning in my head. But it's kind of like, it's taking the action, even though that's there, and then pausing to celebrate the action that I took, not the result. Because I think sometimes we think we're only allowed to celebrate or we're only allowed to be happy if we succeeded. But being brave is like, we could still fall down. You could still get scratched, but you get back up and you keep going. So anyway, that's my thoughts about it. Jo, what are yours?
Yeah, Suze. So I think you hit it spot on. I love that when you were thinking about fearlessness, you were thinking about a character that's not even real, right? Like it's a myth. Because it's a character, like I looked this up because you and I were talking, I renamed my Facebook group something to do with being brave. And so I was curious, like, what does it mean to be fearless or to be brave? And I actually ran a poll in my group, like, which would you rather be? Spoiler alert, it was interesting. It was almost equal. The group is 1,700 people, and people equally said they wanted to be fearless as they wanted to be brave. And the definition, so I looked it up, of fearlessness is that it is being oblivious of danger or peril. It is not even recognizing that things are dangerous. It's like a complete lack of fear. So people who are fearless are like fear without. They're like, fear isn't really part of their vocabulary. So you totally hit on it right there. It's not even feeling like you're scared. Why I think so many women in the Facebook group chose that as the choice, like which would you rather be, is because they would love to be free of that anxiety, that worry, or that inner spin, that sense of dread or angst. The fearfulness is exhausting, and so they're like, oh God, wouldn't that be great if I could just be fearless? But I don't think it's actually an attainable goal, and it's not something I would ever say like you should be more fearless. So I didn't want to adopt that as part of the name of the
Before
Facebook
you go
group.
into brave, I just want to pause there to consider. So I on one of my previous lives, because we've talked about me being a teacher on an episode, I was also a medical student. So I went to medical school. I left in 5th year. But the thing that came to mind is people with diabetes who have neuropathy, so they lose feeling in their digits, like their feet and their toes. They can do a lot of damage without realizing. Because when you said fearless is oblivious, as in like you can't see it there. So you might think I long to be fearless because I want the freedom, but you're not free from the repercussions of that. If you have neuropathy, if you have no feeling in your feet and you step on a nail, you can end up with gangrene and needing to have something amputated because you weren't aware that you have injured yourself. Versus being brave, it's like, I'm going to do this thing and it may hurt, and then I will tend to my wounds, or I will look after the result of this, because
Right.
if I couldn't feel it, like not feeling it doesn't mean it can't hurt you, is what I'm trying to say,
Right.
not succinctly.
Yes. Yeah. So well said. Yeah. There's a little piece of fear that's actually helpful for longevity. Keeps you on the
Yes, like
planet a
if you
little
burn
longer.
yourself or you get too close to a fire and you step back, and it's
Right.
like, to say we were, Indiana Jonesing or whatever and trying to recoup something, and don't send me hate mail and saying that we shouldn't be stealing, but, we're trying to do something that is potentially dangerous. Like there is something hot there, or there's something sharp there.
Right.
If we feel the heat or the sting, then we pause and go, okay,
Right.
how else can I go about this? As opposed to fearless charging through, damaging, doesn't matter, and then later needing to have some serious surgery as a result of our fearlessness, because fearless could
Right.
also be linked to careless if you look at it in that way.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So all
So
that to say, you were about to move on to brave. So I love how you
right.
defined fearless as in oblivious. Like that's what really stood out for me, because I was like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
toddlers are often fearless,
Right.
and then we run around after them. Don't touch that.
That's
Don't get too
yeah.
close to this.
Right. So we kind of learn fear in a way, but we also maybe have embedded a certain level of fear deep in our limbic system because we're the survivors that avoided great peril because we had some wherewithal to hide when the saber-toothed dragon was walking past the cave, right? So like it's partly, the toddler needs to be prevented from its own fearlessness, but maybe somewhere deep inside we learned that too.
Yeah,
That's
because
why we're still
also
here.
too, our parents or our grandparents could have had an experience of something that we've been told of, or we just, as you said, inherently and genetically and generationally, that isn't even around or relevant in today's society.
Right.
But we still, like the Croods example, we spoke about that
Right.
before, but they stay in the
Yeah.
cave because their parents and their grandparents had been protected by being in the cave. But depending on where you are, like I'm thinking with the shift currently to online and the rise of AI, we can fearfully hide in the cave and say like, no, I'm not going to do this, or we can
Right.
see what parts of it can be useful and embraced in our current society. So yeah, I love that.
Really good. Really good. Yeah. So to take it further, then, to be brave means that you have the strength to face danger, fear, difficulty. It doesn't necessarily mean you're without the fear. You muster the strength and the courage to face it. So you were totally onto it, Suze, that being brave is really meeting whatever is in front of you with a sense of respect for the fact that it could be scary. You could be totally scared shitless. You could be totally worried and anxious and nervous. You could have your heart beating out of your chest, but if you still go forward, that's being brave. And what I love so much about that is that it allows for the full range of emotion. It doesn't mean that you're somehow lesser if you're really nervous when you do the thing. It doesn't mean that you have to be, super like bold and composed and, sword held high as you go charging into the, as a victor. It means you could actually really have a lot of human emotions and letting that be okay, just still taking the action anyway.
And sometimes you could surprise yourself. We went to the Gold Coast, so in Australia, that's where our theme parks are, our equivalent of Disney World. Not quite as cool, but still. And my children wanted to go on this jet ski roller coaster, and we lined up for over an hour. And then we get to the front of the queue, and my son's like, I'm not getting on that. And I'm like, stuck. What do I do? I've got two kids, one who's dying to go on there, one who doesn't want to. We've waited over an hour. I know that he will like it, and I'm trying to talk him into it. Anyway, the ride operator, the attendant, overheard and said, oh, buddy, I'll slow it down for you. Which I loved. I loved it so much. And he
Wow,
was
that's
like,
talented.
oh, okay. And then we get on there and he's shaking and he's nervous and he's almost at tears, but not quite. And I would never have forced him if he really, truly didn't want to, but I knew that he wanted to do it. We'd waited an hour. It's like when kids want to see Santa and they're really excited and they get close and then he scares them and they cry and they run away. Another job I did for 6 years was a Santa Claus photographer. But anyway, when we get off the ride, he was like, let's do that again. Like, he loved it. And then he was like, oh, I'm so glad he slowed it down for me, to which I laughed and said he didn't. But it's kind of like that. Sometimes you do the brave thing. Like, I'm going to go on the ride, even though I'm scared.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing. I'm going to do the launch, even though I'm scared. And more people than I anticipated signed up. I'm going to go on this holiday, even though I'm scared. And I have a fabulous time and I want to go again. Or I do this thing alone. Like, sometimes it's like, I don't want to do this alone, but the people that you meet when you're there. So I think all that to consider. Back to the previous episode we did, how to be brave, with the 3 questions.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's not that it won't be there. And then when we line up again for the roller coaster, sure enough, we get to the front, the fear still comes up. It's still a brave choice, because, it still could come flying off the handle. Accidents do happen. And it's funny, we flew recently, and my daughter, on the day that we're flying, is looking at TikToks of planes crashing. I'm like, what are you doing? There's always going to be a fear, like when you put a tin can into the air, that it could all go wrong. But watching videos of it moments before you board, not the best idea.
She's brave. She's feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
But yeah, I suppose that's the last thing. We have a few more minutes before we wrap up. But if people, what's the difference for you between acknowledging a fear, like, this could happen, and then doom scrolling or doom researching all the examples of, how things have gone wrong?
Yeah. Well, I'm not really a fan of the latter. I don't know that it helps to dwell or fester, or I'm never into pre-preparing, or like we talked about before, that worry is a misuse of your imagination. Like, my thesis is, you don't prepare for things to somehow be better in the moment. You stay present, and when the moment comes, that's all you need. So I'm not into the whole doom scrolling thing. I think it's what your brain thinks that you need to do to, like, prepare for every possible outcome. It's like safety seeking. It's thinking like, okay, if plan A happens, then we'll do this. If plan B happens, then we'll do that. And it gives us this false sense of security that we're prepared. But what I see is people waste a lot of time trying to pre-rehearse every possible outcome so that they don't feel surprised or ill-equipped, when all you really needed was just to be confident in yourself in every moment, and the rest will take care of itself.
I love that example, because also too, how many times have we pre-prepared for something and then something happens that never even entered our awareness?
It was a waste of time.
It was a waste of time. It was a waste of time. And I can think of a number of times where that's happened. It's like something that I was anxious about, and I'd gone through however many scenarios. And then at the time something does happen, but it wasn't on any of my lists. And I was like,
well,
you were
shoot
great about this. But if you do oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was thinking, like, maybe I'm talking more in the secular world too, because I am thinking about, there are certain professions where maybe rigorous replays of potential outcomes, like if you're a pilot or a surgeon, or you need to, like, secondhand skill. That's one thing. I'm talking about just living your life, and especially like public speaking. I don't know how many people I talk to where they think that the right answer is to write down every single word that they're going to say, and then try not to read it, right? Like, that kind of preparing is what I think is counterproductive and steals your authenticity and joy and makes you come across like an automaton.
But also too, the surgeon and the pilot example, like Captain Sully had to land the plane on the Hudson, which had never been done. Or a surgeon, like I did a couple of surgeries, as in like held a retractor or something as a medical student. The things that unexpected happen even there, when somebody's blood pressure drops, or somebody faints, or somebody drops an instrument, or whatever, or it looks differently on the scans when you have the person open. It's like, in the moment, you make do. I remember I had to have a surgery a couple of years ago. It was a major one. And then the day after, when the surgeon come to check on me, he was like, I was up all night the night before thinking of all the scenarios of yours, because you have a complicated anatomy. And I said to him, thank goodness you didn't tell me that on the day, or I would never have let you take a knife near me.
That's so good.
That's the whole thing, fearless brave, because I thought, fearless, this guy knows what he's doing, but obviously he was being brave. I love this so much. Thank you once more for joining me, Jo. Where can people find you, and what do you do?
Well, I'm a leadership coach. I help women be brave, especially women who feel like their confidence is shaken or they have imposter syndrome or self-doubt, all of the things. I can be easily found at www.joleader.com, my first name Jo with the word leader after it. And since I'm all about being brave, if you do /being brave, you'll see that I have a special 5-part course on how to be brave. The 5 ways that I see most of my clients get tied up in knots about worrying about what other people think and if they're perfect and afraid to make a mistake and full of self-doubt. Each one is addressed in this little course that I provide. So
Is it like a home
joleader.com
study,
slash
like they can download it and go through
yeah,
it? Oh, brilliant.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's joleader.com/be brave.
Being brave.
Being brave. There we go. Thank you so much. If you can't find that, anyone, send me an email and I'll get you the link. I love it. Thank you for joining me, Jo. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.